best networker in the world? Well, according to a book by Harvey Mackay, he says that if you look at any president of the United States, you will find somebody who has an incredible list of personal and professional contacts. And I take this a step farther because it's anybody who ends up at the top of their profession. President is just the top of the political profession, but if you look at the top people in law firms and accounting firms and real estate firms and venture capital firms, any company that you work in, if you look at the people who are at the top, they have spent a lifetime building connections with people in their industries. That's what you need to do. You need to build those types of relationships so that you're that go-to person. The example that they use in the book is about President Bush, not our current president, but our current president's father. And they talk about the fact that he had been an oilman, a congressman, he had been the head of the CIA, the ambassador to China. He had a ton of different jobs working in politics. And when it came time for Reagan to pick a vice president, he was pushed in the direction of George H.W. Bush because he had a huge network of contacts. Because what he used to do is when he would travel, he would write letters to people. So he cultivated the relationships he already had. He kept them alive. In a day before email, he would constantly send notes, handwritten notes to people saying, I was flying over Iowa today, and I thought of you. You know, he would constantly do little things like that. His secretary said that sometimes he would come back with a stack 2 feet tall of letters that he had written on an extended trip. And it would just have the person's name. She would have to go through the old-fashioned Rolodexes and look for the names and address them and stamp them and get them mailed off. But he was able to do it. Today we have tools that would make it so much easier to keep in touch with people. You just have to make the effort to do it. Because it's all about follow-up. Meeting somebody, building a relationship doesn't mean anything if you're not following up with them. And follow-up doesn't happen by accident. You have to plan for how will I follow up with the people that I meet. How many people in this room regularly send some sort of a note that says, hey, good to meet you, or thank you to someone who helps you out? How many people use email primarily for that type of stuff? Most of the hands that went up. I think that email is fabulous. I use email constantly. However, I receive about 200 to 300 emails every single day. So if somebody sent me a note that said, hey, great to meet you, I'll look at it and go, great to meet you too. Delete. Maybe I'll reply, you know, but usually I'll either delete it or once it falls below that bottom bar where it goes way, way down to where like the 6,000 emails that I haven't replied to are in my inbox. Once it's off that main screen, that's it. However, if you were to send a handwritten note, that comes straight to their desk, and it sits usually on their desk for a few days. Actually, I did a little survey because I send about 5 to 10 handwritten notes every single week to either people I met or people who've sent me referrals. So I knew I was sending 300 to 500 notes a year. So I put a box underneath my desk a couple of years ago. How many handwritten notes do you think I received in the course of that year? 27. I got 27 notes. I sent maybe 300, 400, 500 notes, and I got that. So they stand out. I was giving this presentation to a group of people several years ago who worked for a local company, and at one point, one of the sales reps got up and left the room. He came back in 5 minutes later and tossed a handwritten note that I had sent him 2 years earlier onto the desk, and he said, that has been sitting in my drawer since the first time I met you, because it's the only one I've ever received. I have friends who say they use the handwritten note after a sales call, and they'll go out and meet with a prospect, and they'll send them a note that just says, hey, it was a pleasure to meet you. They'll put it in the mail that day. It'll arrive the next day, and the potential client will call them and say, very classy act. You never see that anymore. Well, do you think that helps you in the sales process if the person is saying, wow, classy act? Yeah. So I think that handwritten notes are something that you should use all the time, especially after you meet somebody for the first time or if you really need to say thank you, because you will be remembered for that effort. And I'm not talking about writing a novel. A couple of words that says, hey, it was a pleasure to meet you at whatever event you met them at. Go ahead and talk about something maybe you talked about at the event, and then set up for the follow-up. If you had talked about going out to lunch, say, I'm going to call you next week to set up that lunch. It doesn't have to be this entire long thing that you write. When my wife and I got married, we split up the thank you notes that you have to send. and we had about 150 guests people at our wedding who sent us gifts, and so we split those up. I had 75 notes, she had 75 notes. 2 weeks later, I was done. She had written 4. She said, what are you writing? You know, how are you getting this many out? And she was writing like 2 pages front and back, telling everybody, you know, every single thing she could imagine. She said, what did you write to your Aunt Catherine? Pulled it out. It wasn't sealed yet. And it says, Dear Kath, sorry you couldn't come to the wedding. We love the Waterford Crystal. Love, Tom and Sarah. Short, sweet, talked about what was important. She goes, what did you send to your cousin Mary, who would be Catherine's daughter? Pulled that out. Dear Mary, thank you for coming to the wedding. We love the China Place setting. Love, Tom and Sarah. My wife goes, but what if they compare notes? They're not going to compare notes. Nobody in an office is going to run down the hall going, hey, did Scott send you a handwritten note? Hey, he said almost the same thing. Plus, I'm telling you to personalize it a little bit, but don't overthink the process. I have talked to people about this who then will spend hours trying to draft these little notes. Don't do that. Just make them short and sweet and to the point, because that's what people want, and it will stand out. So after you meet somebody, there's a couple things you need to do. The first thing you want to do is you want to send that short note, and you want to enclose your business card. People always say, but I just met them the night before. I gave them my business card then. Well, yeah, but they probably went home. The business card probably ended up on a counter. The maid came. The business card is gone. They're back at their office going, I don't remember her name, but boy, I wanted to follow up with her. Send them that business card. Get it to their desk. A lot of people say, well, if I send them an email, I could put my V card on. Yeah, you could, but it's not going to stand out as much as that handwritten note. So get that note off right away. The second thing you want to do is enclose the business card. And if they're a potential client, make sure that you get all the information into your database, because you need to be tracking these things, because sales don't happen overnight. If you meet somebody who's a potential client, you know, you all have different sales cycles, but it could be weeks, months, or years before this is going to lead to business. So you need to get that information captured. And alert other people who you work with as to whom you met. There may be someone else in your firm who knows somebody else in that company, and you can work together to build those relationships. So don't hoard all the information about who's in your network. Share your network with the people who you work with so that you can all work together to help get more business. And plan for how to follow up. You have to strategize. You have to sit around with the people you work with and say, who are the companies we want to be doing business with? I met somebody in that firm. How can we get to the next step? How can we get a lunch? How can we get a meeting? Strategize for it, because if you just sit back and wait for it to happen, you're going to be sitting there for a long time. So you want to create a profile. Having the information on a business card is great. It gives you their name, their address, their email address, their title, but it doesn't go deep enough. You have to have more information about them. You want to keep a record of the people that you meet so that the next time you're going to meet with them, you can recall what information you've learned, because people like it when you remember things that you talked about the last time. So try to gather as much information as you can. Where'd they go to college? What groups are they affiliated with? You know, what special interests do they have in the city that you live in? What is it that excites them, you know, to get out of bed and go to work every day? Find out as much information as you can about it and put that in the database, because it might just be something that you can help them with. If they have a special interest, you might be able to connect them with somebody. You know, if they love fly fishing and you start seeing a consistent pattern, you might be able to introduce them to some other people who love fly fishing. So pay attention to this information and ask people about their families. I talk to people all the time. They go, oh, I don't like to talk about families. Why not? How many people in the room are married? We talked about that. How many people have children? A lot of people. If I talk to you about your kids after we walk out of here today, would you go, yeah, I don't talk about them? Or would we be standing out in that hall for an hour and a half while I heard everything that your children did, you know, every single day? Well, he's pulling out his wallet with pictures of his kids. They're on his phone. So what you want to do is you want to ask people, because the most important things in the lives of people are their children. So if you take an interest in their children, that's going to go a long way. And one of the things I do, because I have young children, I like to find out what ages people's kids are. If they have children that are older, you know, that's good, because I can then ask them questions. Like I have an 11-year-old daughter. If someone has a daughter in college, I can ask, at what age will she turn on me? And at what age will she come back? So you can ask people, even if you're not in the same stages of having kids, you can do that. My 11-year-old daughter just got her black belt. If I meet another parent who has children in the martial arts, we have a conversation. Because I will tell you, if you have a young daughter and you have to sit in a little folding chair and watch a 13-year-old boy do a roundhouse kick and not pull it and bloody her nose, and you can't get out of that chair, you have a bond with another parent who has shared that experience. So look for what people do. If their kids play soccer and your kids play soccer, you have something to talk about. So find out what you're doing is you're looking for common ground. And sometimes people will come up to me and they'll say, well, I don't have kids. That's not fair. I can't talk about kids. Just because you don't have kids doesn't mean you can't take an interest in other people's kids. It's okay to ask them about their family. And then who do you know? Who in your network already could be beneficial to these people who you've just met? If you go back to your office when you meet new people and think, who are one or two people that I could introduce them to? They're going to be blown away, because when you meet new people, isn't it your fantasy that they're going to go back to their office and look for people and introduce you to them who can help your career? That's what we all want. We all want the people we meet to help us. But if we're not willing to help them first, we're not going to see the results we want out of building a network. And you've got to be creative. Just showing up at the same old thing, doing the same things every single time is not going to help you build a reputation. Sending a holiday card is a nice thing, but a lot of business professionals get 50, 100, 500 holiday cards. A lot of people, that's their only touch to their network. The only thing that they do every single year is send a holiday card, and they think, I'm right there. It's not standing out. How many of you in this room could tell me right now every single person who sent you a holiday card last December? No, nobody can. It doesn't stand out. You need to be creative. You need to outthink your competition every single day. When you get out of bed, you've got to think, what can I do that's more creative than my competition is doing? And I promise you, if every day you try to think of little ways to outthink your competition, you're going to blow your competition away, because they might not be getting out of bed and thinking, how can they outpace you?